Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 109 of the WA Running Podcast, coming to you on Monday, the 9th of March, 2026. In this week's episode, we cover the state senior track and field champs that feature the state 1500. We had some folks running Shizuoka Marathon over the weekend in Japan. We talk a bit of Herdys, which happens this coming Friday. And we talk all things lactate threshold testing and training zones with Zander and Raf from Front Runner. Across my screen is someone who I was seeing on Instagram last night. She had her feet or legs wrapped up in cling film. I'm not too sure what that was in preparation for Herdys this week, but hopefully she explains a little bit more. Vici Richardson, how are you,
Hello.
mate?
I'm good, thank you, Simon. Yes, good intro. That was my key session this week, wrapping my legs in cling film. So
5 by cling film. Good. Okay. That's. I don't know if that's a good sign or not. As we head into Herdys this week, maybe we can cover that in training weeks in just a moment.
Who knows?
And then on the other side of my screen is someone that celebrated his 39th birthday yesterday on Sunday. Chris the Metronome Shaw. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Another year older, another year wiser.
Yep.
Don't quite feel 39. I celebrated my birthday by running a 38-kilometre run on Saturday when I was still 38 years old. So that probably tells you all you need to know about turning 39.
I feel like last year we were talking about, was it last year on your birthday or someone's birthday where they ran a ridiculous number of Ks and whether or not you would run 39 fathoms? That did not occur.
No, I think a fathom's a very long unit of measurement, so I wouldn't think so. Maybe next weekend I'll run as old as I feel.
All right. Sounds good, mate. All right. Well, let's get into training weeks because I've got a feeling this is going to be a very long episode. So we'll start with you, Vici. How's your week been as we edge ever so close to the Herdys start line that's this Friday?
It's not too bad. I'm just managing a few niggles still. Mm-hmm. So I think some of it's just in my head, to be honest. But last week was a bit of a taper week. We did a couple of we were together on a couple of occasions last week, actually, weren't we? We did the wear test and community run at the running centre on Wednesday, which was a fairly easy run for me. And it's not like I've got any particular, I wouldn't say it's pain, but I've definitely got an awareness. I've got quite a lot of tightness in my calves, and just a few other niggles, and everything's kind of creeping. Yeah, it just feels like everything's moving around and just bits and pieces. So I did do my last person standing run on Friday night, which I'd intended to start earlier, but to be honest, it probably wasn't a bad thing that I started it at 5 o'clock because it was still 33 degrees and it was 28 degrees when I finished it. And I did a run walk. It was really, really hard going. I felt like maybe that's a good training for Herdys, although the weather's looking fairly favourable at this moment in time, so compared to previous years. And then, yes, went to see Ella, a physio friend, at Front Runner on Friday morning. And I'd already got this advice from Tina a few weeks ago, or actually a few months ago now, to start cling filming things. So Ella built on it a little bit, and because I've got this very, very slight Achilles tendinopathy, which has been bothering me a bit, she suggested that I started to apply, and she sent me a link to kind of a method of this wrap, which is an application of a bruising cream and a anti-inflammatory cream mixed together, put on the site, and then another layer, like massage into the skin, and then another layer of thick combination of the cream, and then a layer of cling film. The idea being, and it doesn't work for everything because it's when there's a kind of some sort of tendon issue or something that's quite close to the surface of the skin. So tendons, Achilles is a good one because it's quite close to this layer of the skin. And it's the idea is it's just like a really intense topical treatment to kind of stimulate the blood, get things to the surface, and then you wrap it. So, and the thick layer that you leave on the top of the skin, it takes a while to absorb. So if you go to bed for 8 hours, which I rarely do, but did manage to sleep for 8 hours last night, as I was saying before we recorded, it's a good way of just having that time for your body to kind of absorb that cream. And so, I mean, I have to say I'm getting up with Achilles and calves that are a lot less stiff than they were. And I am walking quite normally and running quite nicely as well, quite, comfortably in the morning. So I'm going to keep doing it. She also did some dry needling on my calves, which seems to have been, well, I mean, I'm so bruised. So I've got bruises all over my legs. So it looks like I've been beaten up. So yeah, hopefully that's all working. And I did 63 Ks last week. So a bit of a taper week, finishing off training and all eyes on Friday.
So 63 Ks in this last week. What would be your mileage in this coming week?
What, before Herdys?
Including Herdys.
Oh, I don't know. Got no idea. It's going to be about 14 Ks between now and Thursday.
Yep.
Friday, it will be, I don't know, what will it be? 4 till 12. And then we'll see how long Saturday goes for. I don't know.
Beautiful.
Don't know.
Beautiful.
We'll have to see.
Excellent. In terms of, because you've done it before, along with like the taper and not doing much running, actually, the week of, like what's going through your mind from a Herdys prep point of view? Is there anything that you're really thinking about, or is it just like any other race, just asking for a mate?
It's a lot to think about. It's not your normal. It's not like a marathon. It's not
where you
like
just show up and run.
Like you just show up and run. Well, you don't do that, do you, at all? But you know what I mean. There is a lot to think about because for the, you've got what you're going to wear, but you've got multiple changes of that. It's, you've got to think about different shoes. What's your shoe rotation going to be? Yeah. Food, gazebo, table, chair, towels, ice, like anti-chafe, like all the bits and pieces, head torches, lanterns for make sure you can see what you're doing, having a printed schedule up so your crew know what to do. There's just a lot to think about. So I'm probably a bit overstimulated at the moment with it all. But what I'm doing is I've got lots of lists and I'm ticking things off. I'm in my spare room at the moment as we record, and my bed behind me is covered in everything that I need laid out. So I've just kind of started to put all that there. So I've got it. So when I get to Thursday, I can literally just put it all in a bag so it's all ready to go and I don't need to think about it. So it's just probably reducing the things that I have to think about in the lead up to Friday. So that by the time we get to Friday, the food shop's done, the food is prepared. It literally just needs putting in an esky. Everything is ready to go and I don't need to worry about much on Friday. I've taken the day off work, but I have to jump on a call and I have to do a presentation. So, we have complex lives that don't just involve us going to races like elite runners do. And there are more things to think about than just a race. So, yeah. And I think that's probably my perspective philosophically on this event versus the last time I did it it consumed me last time. And whilst, yes, I agree, like you just said, there's lots to think about, but it definitely isn't consuming me as much as it did the last time or the first time round. it's a part of my life. It's not the whole of my life. And I've got lots of other things that are important, equally important. And as I said to Tina this morning on a message, after this is over, we are going to focus on short distances. I am transferring my Gold Coast Marathon entry. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing a marathon this year. I just want to run short stuff, fun stuff, feel poppy, enjoy myself, and strengthen my poor aching legs.
Very good. Not training for a marathon. Same. All right. Well, moving over to you, Chris. How's your week been, mate?
Yeah, pretty good. Good in the sense that I managed to get some Ks done. But I mean, from the start of the week, I felt fairly off. I felt actually quite good on the public holiday. I didn't run on the Monday, but felt good. But had been in the garden all day. The kids had been sick, so maybe. Based on how I felt Tuesday, I didn't end up going for a session on Tuesday. I just went for a jog. Did my normal kind of midweek long run on Wednesday, and then Thursday did a session with Matt at Manga, but I pulled the pin halfway through the session. Just from the very start, like the RPE on everything I was doing was just through the roof. I checked my heart rate, which I don't usually do during a workout, and my heart rate was well above what I now know to be my threshold. So, I said to Matt, look, my guts wasn't feeling great. My body wasn't feeling great. As I said, Matt, I'm going to cut it here. Still managed to get 4. So it was alternating K. Still managed to get four reps in. But yeah, we were aiming for 8. Matt ended up doing 6, I think, because he's still kind of returning from that glute injury. But no, man, he seems to be training very well at the moment. So he wasn't breathing. He was fine. But yeah, no, that was a bit of a downer. But I mean, I've had now, I think 10 weeks or maybe more of consistent building mileage.
That's good.
And I've been thinking for the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks, I'm due a down week, but have been pushing that envelope a little bit each week. And I guess that's probably just a self-confirmation that I should have just had a bit of a down week either in the previous couple of weeks. So I still managed to get out for a long run on Saturday. So I didn't want to run on my birthday in the morning, so I went out on Saturday. And just talking about having a down week, I went for a 38-kilometer run and did 4x5 Ks at like roughly, like I guess what you would perceive as marathon effort. But having not what I've actually recognised is that when you're training for a marathon that you're not actually racing, the motivation is extremely low, right? I mean, I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have so much fun running this marathon at Bunbury. It's gonna be fantastic. I can't wait. But when you're coming back from injury to try and push yourself to be fit enough to actually pace a 3-hour marathon, which I was in a position to do relatively easily last year, but coming back from that and just making sure that I'm physically ready to do so has been. I didn't want to half-ass it, I didn't want to go in this by not training for it. So yeah, training for a marathon, where you're not racing, is funny because when you are racing and you've got something coming up in 5 weeks and you're going to put everything on the line for it, you're willing to go into the well for every session to make sure that you get the most out of yourself on race day. But on the weekend, I bumped into Matt halfway through the session, so I took it fairly conservatively in the first 5K, did a relatively aggressive second lot because I had Matt with me, and so inevitably that got my juices flowing. And then the third one was equally as probably aggressive, and then by the fourth one, I was like, you know what? I could either pull the pin and not do it, but knowing that I pulled the pin on my Thursday session, I was like, no, I'm going to still whack these last 5Ks. But my heart really wasn't in absolutely sinking myself. So I just took it as a more honest effort and probably an effort that I should have stayed with for the entirety of the workout. So nevertheless, ran 124, 125 Ks for the week. Kind of, looking forward to like this. The reason why I've been pushing myself, I guess, and I've been talking for a long time now. So sorry for not giving anyone an inroad to actually say anything. But I guess the reason for me pushing for so long without really having a down week is that I knowingly Maddie is away this week for work. So I knew that I was going to be having a down week this week. And I typically wouldn't be having a down week 4 or 5 weeks out from a marathon. So I guess I've done what most coaches will tell you not to do, and that's bank fitness, in the months leading up to a race. And so I'm Maddie's away this week, and then we're in Singapore next week. So if I'm not running much next week, Singapore is going to be a different beast because I'm just not going to be able to cope with the humidity. So I won't have a treadmill to run on. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But got a couple of good runs planned over the next few weeks in the lead up to the race, which, as I said in past episodes, I think like I'm confident I can run the time. That's not a question. It's just about motivation. Yeah, exactly. And knowing that I've got Transcend kind of looming in the distance. Like, I guess I mentioned to you guys today, I'm not really sure what my motivation is to run a fast half, like in between Bunbury and Transcend. So I'm really enjoying running on the trail. So I want to kind of pour most of my heart and soul into doing that for the next kind of 5 months before Transcend, so that I'm adequately prepared for it and hopefully can run a reasonable time without having a specific goal time in mind.
Interesting. I mean, Saturday wasn't too bad though, right? In terms of paces, you were kind of hitting the paces, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that
3-hour mark type pace.
Yeah, I think if we go through it, I think I ran 4:05 average for the first lot, 3:58 for the second, 3:58 or 3:59 for the third, and then I think 4:05 for the fourth. So yeah, I mean, they're all well under 3-hour pace. Like that's not a question. It's just, I wasn't going to go out and just train at 3-hour pace because I want to make sure that I'm
fitter than that.
Fitter than that, yeah.
Fair enough.
So I think in a couple of weeks' time, I'll do a really long, what should be a steady run, roughly around that 3-hour pace. And so if anyone wants to join in on a 25K marathon simulation around Lake Munga on Sunday, the 29th of March, you're more than welcome to join. That'll be 2 weeks out from Bunbury Marathon. So if anyone's got a session they want to run and they want to run 4:12s to 4:15s for close to, an hour and 40 minutes or 2 hours or whatever it'll work out to be, then I'm your guy.
BYO trestle table or trestle table provided?
It will be a trestle table provided. You have to bring your own drinks and gels. I'm not paying for that, but it'll be a good opportunity to run in a pack. I think Matt's going to come along. I think a couple of our other mates might jump in just because they're running kind of aiming for 90-minute half marathons. So, you can jump in for as long or as little as you like. It'd be good fun.
We should get Bix down there and do a community run.
Shit, that's not a bad idea, Vicky. That's a pretty good idea. I'll see what lads up to on a Sunday. Yeah.
If I was in Perth, which I'm not, unfortunately, I would say me and Brian will come down and run at 4:30 pace and do a couple of buses.
Yeah, true.
But I'm not around. Brian might be.
Maybe if we were a little more organised, we might. But no, that's cool. It's a good idea. Simon, you ran a 5K PB over the weekend.
I did
a parkrun PB.
A parkrun PB.
Yeah,
unofficial.
Maybe take us through your week, mate. Before we jump into a bit of an interview with Raf and Zander.
Yeah. So like Vicky, a taper week. So just easing off the mileage. I've been hitting sort of 110, 120s for the last 4 to 5 weeks. So, just heading into Herdys this week, it was just easing right off while still maintaining some of the sessions. I think originally as part of the plan, I think my Saturday session was going to be 2x2K or something. So I did ask Tina whether it was okay to do a sneaky park run send on the Saturday instead. But just kept doing the sessions as planned. So it was just a light Tuesday, like 8 by 2 minutes. I was saying to Vicky on the community run, so I usually do my sessions either up and down Lenore Road, which is notorious for me doing my VO spews, or I'll do them at the Kingsway Regional Complex, which is not too far from where home is. And there's usually a track there, but there's also like a footpath that's, I don't know, I'm going to say 600 to 800 meters straight, which allows me to do my VO2 sessions. But I think one of the Asian Cup women's teams are training at Kingsway at the moment. So they spend most of the time doing, maintenance works on a Tuesday morning. So I didn't really have much of a spot to do my reps. So I decided to go to a random car park within that complex. And what I've noticed was a lot of dodgy men just hanging out in their cars in the car park. So nice. So I joined them doing psycho laps around the car park. So so that was good. So that gave me a bit of confidence. I've been enjoying the Tuesday sessions in particular. So just feeling the fitness come about, on my Tuesday session. So that was cool. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, we were hanging out for the last couple of days with TRC. And then Thursday was 4x4 minutes with a 1 minute jog. I did that around Herdsman. So it was good to see the Herdsman Harrier guys around there. And thanks to them, I was able to get a bit of a tow during my reps there. So that was good. Managed to keep that at an honest effort. And then in the lead up to Saturday's park run, I decided to experiment with fly carb. And so my plan was to try it out on Friday and see if I shit myself. And if I don't shit myself, I'll try it on the Saturday morning before park run. And I think I was giving you, Chris, a minute by minute commentary of what my stomach was doing in the lead up to just going on a Friday jog with Max around the river. So you're meant to take so there's 2 packets. There's one which is the bicarb, and then there's one that's almost like an energy gel type thing where you create this, I don't know, jelly-like substance. It doesn't look like jelly. It looks like a lot of other things. Yeah, it does look like semen a little bit. And then you mix the bicarb in, and it's just this sludge that you consume, and you consume that 2 hours beforehand, and then you run 2 hours later, and 60 minutes in, just no good, just no good whatsoever. So thankfully there's some nice toilets at my work, and I was able to spend most of the 60 minutes in the toilet.
Wait, but can I ask, you were going for a jog?
It was more. It was not to see if the bicarb works. It was more because I know that bicarb tends to have an after effect of gut issues. So it was more a case of, could my body tolerate it, as opposed to would it be effective? So
computer says no.
And the computer just didn't agree with me. I still managed to go for a jog, but it was Friday, I believe it was like 35 degrees, so I was well dehydrated.
It was horrible on Friday anyway.
Yeah, I was dehydrated from the bicarb, and I was dehydrated from the run. I was conscious that was going to be a bad Saturday. But Saturday was good. It was still pretty warm on Saturday. I think it was already sort of late 20s by the time park run started, but did it at the local junior lot park run, and I think I was conscious of how hot it was, so I sort of backed off slightly. I think I had this big grand plan of just absolutely going for it and sending it, but ended up pacing it really well, and 17:23, which was nice.
You did smash your PB, right? I was looking on the
smashed it.
Smashed
by a minute.
It's amazing.
Yeah, by a minute. Yeah. But in my head, I was aiming for 17:15. I think I told the boys. So I was hoping to do like 3:25 pace. I wasn't far off, but
17:20, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
pretty
So
rad.
I wasn't too far off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But there was a moment where there was a bit of doubt in my head as I was running. And so I think there's more seconds in there. But very happy.
Oh, let's not play it down, Simon. That's an excellent time.
Yeah, it was good.
Well done.
I was pretty happy.
I missed it because I wasn't on Strava very much over the weekend.
No, that's okay. I think in my head I was hoping for a sub 17:15. Didn't hit it, but still very happy. The execution was very good. And
brilliant.
I think I was happy because there wasn't, because usually with Joondalup there's a lot of fast kids there, and I was hoping to get towed along a little bit, but no, there wasn't anyone around, so it's a bit of a solo time trial. But very happy to get the sub 18 monkey off my back. So reflection on how fit I feel, which has been the case for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, nice. I think the number of comments you got on that run probably reflected how many people have followed you on this journey from an 18 whatever and going through a full summer of track and not even getting close, and then all of a sudden after actually not training for a marathon. Yeah,
all I needed to do was train for a secret marathon to get me to sub 18 shape. So no, very good. What a way to prepare for Herdys than to run a very fast 5K the week before. So
excellent.
This week
also,
will be a light week before the big dance on Friday.
Mark Griffith says, great podcast content, amazing. It was all for the podcast. As was my cling filming of my legs.
All for the pod. Yeah,
I'm reading
done sub 18 ages ago.
Other comments.
It's been stringing us along.
No, very good. Yeah, so happy. Over the net. Well, if my body holds up after Herdys, it's sort of getting into that 10K half marathon type stuff. So the A goal is still Joondalup half. There'll be a couple of races in the lead up to that. That's kind of the A goal at the moment.
Sicko.
Nice.
Very good, mate. It's good. All right. Well, as we alluded to at the top, we had a chance to speak with Raf Baugh and Zander Mostert from Frontrunner this evening, talking all things lactate threshold with regards to my testing that was done a couple of weeks ago. We find out just about how small my engine is and, what I think the listeners will gain a lot of insight from this. Here's our chat with Raf and Zander. All right, today we are joined by coaches Raf Baugh and Zander Mostert of Frontrunner, both of which put me through a lactate threshold test a couple of weeks back after Raf suggested it following a bit of a discussion about recent training zones series that I was listening to on the Physiology of Endurance Running podcast. Suggest any listeners interested in the definition of training zones go check that series out because it goes into great detail about what's happening inside of the body during different exercise intensities. But today we're going to hear all about my lactate threshold testing, my results, what that means for my training and how I can use this information to progress my training goals in the future. Many of you will know Raf Baugh is head coach and director of Frontrunner coaching and physiotherapy, coaching some of the state's top-level distance runners and triathletes. He's also focusing on a lot of junior athletes these days, trying to build up the next batch of heroes for us to follow along in the next few years. Aside from being a world-class duathlete in his prime, he's also founder of the Running Centre in West Perth and now in his 17th year is the leading running store in Perth. We also have, as I said, Zander Mostert, a distance running and triathlon coach, ESSA sports scientist, coaching the likes of young gun Andrew Helbush to second place at the recent 5,000 metre state champs. Raf and Zander, welcome to the WA Running Podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Yeah, no, very excited to have you both. Zander, before we get stuck into the science, mate, I'd love to hear about yourself. I think you mentioned a few things to me when we caught up a few weeks back, but maybe you could give the listeners and Simon and Vici a bit of background on your history with endurance sport and how you became part of the team at Frontrunner.
Yeah, definitely. Started back in early high school. Mum got me and my brother into triathlon, and through that, progressed through the ranks as most juniors do. Pathways weren't as developed back then, but I still managed to get into the state team, which was pretty cool. That was kind of the biggest achievement, I guess, of that part of my life. Then started studying sports science at UW 2022, and was competing in competitive road cycling. So I had moved away from the triathlon, and just kind of was on the road bike, enjoyed the hours out in the hills. Just the solidarity was nice. And then started coaching as a bit of a side hobby for some friends, one of them being Andrew Helbush. We actually went to school together. And yeah, he just progressed really well and responded very good to the training. And now, he's achieved some amazing results. And Raf sort of saw that coming last year, and I was still needing to do my final prac placement. So it all ended up working out really well. Got in with Ben just before he went over to Melbourne, so got to learn from the best there. And then, started up in January. So here we are now.
Fantastic, mate. Appreciate that. So obviously the triathlon and cycling background, yourself. Where does running sit with you at the moment, mate?
Well, I am training up now. I thought to myself, I got to get back into it with where I am. So going for sub 16 this year for 5K, and then I want to do a half and a 10 and just see what I can get. So I think the PB is like 16:40, but that was from like 2020. So I'm hoping there's a bit more room in it.
Yeah, nice, mate. Well, might be time to dust the cobwebs off the shoes and get out there. Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, let's get into the subject then. We're going to talk about lactate threshold testing. Do you want to start with the basics, mate? And bear in mind, I'm pretty basic when it comes to understanding science lingo. So maybe take us through what lactate, or I think they're also called ventilatory thresholds. What are they, and what role do they play in our physiology?
I think the term threshold is definitely overused in the running scene, which is no one's fault directly. It's kind of a term that's thrown around, and I think most people use it generally in a more or so accurate way. But if we really narrow it down to what it is, there's a bit more to it. But both VT or ventilatory thresholds and lactate thresholds, they correspond and represent the same thing, and that is changes in our physiology at a certain intensity. So as we progress and increase our intensity, both lactate and ventilation will change in a similar manner. So LT1 and VT1 or ventilatory threshold represent the first change that we might see when we begin to increase intensity. So at a really easy, steady state of intensity, ventilation doesn't change much. It might go up a little bit, and same with lactate. But once we hit LT1 or VT1 is where we see that first inflection and the change in those values. So I guess the definition for threshold itself, the term, is a great way to sum it up. It's an intensity that's required to create a certain reaction or condition. So when we plot them together, we see this a very similar trend. And like I said, they both just represent these changes in our physiology or our metabolic pathways as we progress from low intensity to high intensity. But actually applying them to your own physiology and your own training that's where you can really go super deep into the science and make it work for you, rather than just claiming this is my threshold as a general principle. So we can definitely dive a bit more deeper into what it means as we get to some of the other questions.
Keeping it basic, you've mentioned a few different things in there. Threshold, you've also mentioned LT1, LT2 and VT1, VT2, and there's another term that's used, tempo. Can you talk us through the difference between threshold, LT1, LT2 and tempo?
Yeah. So the term tempo, I mean, it's derived from this idea of like a consistent pace, but we've attributed it now to, I guess, LT1. We've replaced the term LT1 for tempo. So it represents a period in our physiology where we're able to sustain a relatively stable high intensity for a long period of time. So, but for everybody, tempo is different in terms of the duration that can be sustained for. We see, elite marathon runners, running close to 2 hours, they are able to sustain a very high tempo, whereas someone who is very new to running might only be able to sustain their tempo for a 10K. So, again, the term is very subjective to the person, but the objective markers are what we're looking for. So, as we approach higher intensities, our body shifts from less aerobic fat metabolism and aerobic glycolytic metabolism into a little bit of more anaerobic glycolytic metabolism. So through that process, we begin to increase our production or accumulation of lactate. So lactate being a product of glycolysis. Again, another misconception is lactate is a waste product. It really isn't. It's a natural thing that we produce in order to buffer out hydrogen ions, which are a result of breaking down glycogen. So without lactate, we actually wouldn't be able to continue exercising. Plus, our brain, liver, and a few other organs actually use it as a fuel source. So when we hit tempo or that first threshold, we see that initial rise in lactate production because we've entered this state of increased intensity. It then continues relatively linear in a linear fashion because we're still able to buffer it, we're still able to utilize it, and the intensity hasn't gotten to our more realistic threshold yet. And that's when we hit LT2 or VT2, and that's when we see the rapid or almost exponential accumulation of lactate because we are then unable to buffer it or reutilize it, recycle it. And the intensity that we're trying to run at actually requires anaerobic glycolysis because that's the only way we're able to produce the amount of energy required to, I guess, go in that linear velocity. We wouldn't be able to get that energy from fat glycolysis or aerobic glycolysis. We have to get it from the anaerobic pathway, and that's why that lactate just shoots up.
So if you sort of imagine, guys, as an example, and Simon, it'd be topical for you thinking of your 800. In an 800, and Zander, you can correct me if I'm a little bit off, but normally an 800 meter runner will hit 20 to 25 millimoles of lactate per liter. So there's a huge, the better the athlete, the more the anaerobic contribution. If you come down to a half marathon, they'll be between 4 and 6 millimoles. If you went to the 5K, it might be 8, sort of maybe 8 to 12 millimoles. And if you look at where energy is being derived from, you'll see the lactate that's being produced because of the anaerobic contribution to the exercise. So generally, the 800 meters has the highest lactate levels, just ahead of the 400, and then the 1500 might have 10 to 15 millimoles. You might see 8 to 12 in a 5,000. You might see 4 to 6 millimoles in a 10K to half marathon. And then normally in a really world-class marathon runner, normally 2 to 3 millimoles might be where the lactate sits. Is that a fair representation, Zander, of the different contributions?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we were going to touch on the differences in curves that you might see in an 800 meter specialist to a 5K to a marathoner. And yes, definitely the sheer amount of lactate you can produce is going to be different, but that also stems from differences in fiber recruitment, so muscle fiber recruitment. So the 800 meter guys are going to have way more type 2A and type 2B fibers, which predominantly utilize glycolysis and hence also anaerobic. Whereas our elite marathoners are going to have, almost no ability to accelerate quickly or produce force over a short period of time. But the sheer amount of energy they're able to produce using fat allows them to run 240s for like a half. So, but again, it's trainable to the extent like what physiological change are you targeting, and what do you have to do to exhibit that in like their performance? So, but we'll touch on that once we get to that question a little bit more.
Yeah, and we can touch on it a bit more when you talk about Chris specifically and how he's going to start running for a half. So just take us back then. What's the origins of it? Where did this all stem from?
Yeah, I actually had to do a bit of research because I actually didn't know much about this, and they didn't really teach me a lot on this topic at uni either. But it's relatively simple. So in the early 1900s, they discovered that lactate was actually a compound produced during exercise. And then obviously they realized, it actually is produced all the time because we're constantly burning glucose. And then they started to see, okay, what happens when we increase intensity? It starts to go up. So they attributed it with an increase in exercise. And I guess that's also how the misconception that it's a waste product came about, because they were like, if this is going up and I'm deteriorating, then that must be what's causing my deterioration. But obviously that's been, pushed aside, hopefully. And then in the 1970s, a guy called Aloy Maida introduced the concept of OBLA. I don't know if you guys are familiar with OBLA. So OBLA stands for onset of blood lactate accumulation. So they're global standards or markers are sort of approved by most of literature to represent those points on the threshold. So, you've got OBLA 2 or 2.5 to represent tempo, and OBLA 4 to 4.5 to represent your threshold or LT2. So 2 to 2.5 millimoles is, widely suggested that that's where your tempo or LT1 might fall, and then 4 to 4.5 is where your threshold or LT2 might fall. But now recently, with all the modern testing and all the equipment we have, we've seen a lot more clarity in those areas and starting to utilize lactate to actually prescribe training, create windows, determine, maximum lactate steady state. And it's come a long way. And now we're seeing again another jump in how trendy it is with all the pros using the monitors and getting it integrated into daily living. It's quite interesting. So.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on, like whether it's some of the elites that we see on YouTube or influencers using those test kits as part of their training. I guess, and it has become a more common practice more than ever. But how about, at front runner specifically? So how is, lactate testing in its various forms used to guide perhaps training, whether it's, someone training in a middle distance to perhaps training to a marathon distance?
I'll jump in quickly here, Zander.
Yeah.
So we had a physiologist who is now at Murdoch, who's also sort of previously been at Waste, called Paul Goods, who worked with us 2012. At that point, we were mainly working with adult populations of recreational athletes almost exclusively, but we had a cohort of, let's say we had, or maybe we're coaching 20 people at the time, but Rachel Smith won the Busselton Half Ironman in 4:17. Chris O'Neill ran 2:25. Scott Thompson ran 2:28. Adam Martin ran 2:31. Ross McLean ran 2:31. We had Mike Boundy run 2:36. And we were starting to get Rochelle Rogers, who ended up running 2:34, come through. So we had these athletes that were heading towards endurance running, and we wanted to try to look at the response to the training that we were prescribing and see what shifted and what didn't with our training stimulus. And Goodsy was good that we tracked those athletes probably 4 times over 18 months. And what we saw was essentially a big shunting, which Zander can talk to, of the LT1 towards the LT2. So a huge amount more economy. At about the same time, I went to Kenya and met Renato Canova, who had some good assets to a lot of data from the 80s with a guy called Bourdin, who was an Italian guy who'd won the Olympic marathon in 88 in Seoul. And they'd done a series of longitudinal tests. Now, I'll flag it and say it's about the same time as EPO seemed to become rampant. So I don't know whether they were measuring training, whether they were measuring a range of factors. But he had the data, and I've got the data on my other computer, from Bourdin in the build-up 18 months out from the Olympics in Seoul, and what they did training-wise and the changes in his blood lactate and heart rate for endurance training. And it was primarily focused on shifting LT1 closer to LT2, and there was no real focus on moving LT2. That was just maintained. And you hear similar stories through oral tradition of Pat Clohessy with Rob De Castella, and we're talking here specifically to the marathon, where Rob De Castella would try to touch these zones in a week, even if he couldn't quite get there because he brought so much efficiency and economy from running 250 Ks a week to the workouts that he didn't actually always have the freshness to get into the higher intensity environments. He just tried to get as close as he could and was very durable and adaptable, which is obviously conducive to, say, the marathon. If we juxtapose that with, say, we had a young boy who's trained with us for a few years who's going through puberty. In puberty, it's the perfect time to build VO2 max and speed because there's all these growth factors. And this young boy in one weekend went from 156 to 152 and 50.6 to 48.9 and all of a sudden, as the sixth fastest guy in his race on seed time, he's state champion, top 10 in the country for his age, whack. We've put him for the last 4 weeks in very high lactate environments, trying to get him used to 20 to 25 millimoles of lactic and making sure on his rest days he's just on a foam roller and doing nothing. So it's really about understanding what does the race demand, how much time does the person have, and what am I going to do to create an environment that allows them to either build conditioning so that we can get more specific a little bit down the line, or be really specific now because we're trying to peak. And so it's about understanding how you would build the conditioning to allow the really high specificity to be relevant and appropriate, because some people just aren't fit enough to do that really high specificity work and they need more time building capacity. And some people, and if you understand the demands of each event group, some people are really well conditioned and really ready for really high levels of specificity. And so what's specific really comes down to understanding the metabolic profile and the physiological profile of each individual, which makes coaching when you're a scientist much more laboursome because you need to really deeply understand the data, and often the runner doesn't understand it at all. So you're juxtaposed with a person who's very subjective and running. Of all the things I've come into play with people and exposed to lots of different environments, different sports, running seems to bring out trait neuroticism more than any other sport that I've come across. And you need numbers to help people understand and balance out their emotions. And when you can show people numbers, I suppose at front runner, our hedge is that people who are inclined to a balanced personality profile of subjective and objective elements will start to understand the objective elements better and therefore become more process oriented. And what we'll see is a better yield of their potential individually, regardless of where that starting point is, because they take away a lot of the feelings and balance it out with a deeper understanding of the process of training and the fact that training is a small amount of art and a lot of science, rather than just purely artistic, where someone without knowledge being creative could come up with a better solution than someone with embedded knowledge layering a little bit of artistry on top. So I would say the science needs to be the cake and the art needs to be the icing, not the other way around.
Yeah, so with the art, say, Raf, would that be around, once you've established a long period of time with a particular athlete and you might be training them in a particular way, achieving results, the art might be in tweaking that training ever so slightly to try and produce a elevated result in whatever event that they might be competing in?
Yeah, and it's also the fun of intellectual curiosity and testing. Why I love having Zander or Ben working with me is I can continue to learn by having people who understand some of the empirical elements of what we're doing and challenge our systems, because we're probably one of the only environments in the world where we've got 5-year-olds through to adults training within our framework, and it's almost like a vast sociological experiment in a way, where the number of data points that I'm accumulating over the last 20 years start to give me a very good hypothesis about what we can change, when, how, and why. And so for me, it's really exciting. We almost started with adults, went to really young kids, and now we're getting adolescents, which is the really peak time where if we want to create some West Australian kids that are truly world class or who reach their absolute potential, we have the biggest window of opportunity to make physiological changes, because their body, their chest cavity, their force production rate, everything starts to go exponentially in the direction of improvement, and it's biological. It's not engineered by us. It's engineered by God or biology, whichever way you view it. And so we now, after 20 years of coaching, I think I'm very confident saying that there's no other coaching group in Australia that's been any better at converting whatever VO2 max or ceiling of engine size we inherited and converting that in the marathon. But we had relatively small motors to convert. So when we get a group of kids where we can actually, at the point of biggest impact, build bigger motors and then have the chance to work with them long term to convert it, it's very exciting personally, intellectually, socially, to see what sort of progress these great young kids can make, because they're so ambitious. And so it's almost, I don't know what it's like for you, Zander, but it gives me, working with the young people gives me a new lease of life, because if I ask them to send me their goals, they all are very, very aspirational. Whereas after 20 years of working with adults, it's a bit more objective. And so they know what they want. It's little incremental steps. Where at the kids, there's a sense of real broad and open-minded goals, where, you get a lot of time to paint that picture with them over time and see how the picture turns out.
I guess the other way to look at the data is, inevitably people will have shit races, and it's just almost using the data to, almost convince that person who's probably in a rut because they're thinking, oh, I've trained so hard, but the day wasn't my day. And is it because my training was really shit, or whatever the circumstances, almost using this testing as a way to go, look, you're actually getting fitter. Your day just wasn't your day. So that might be an interesting element to it as part of the training and the coaching element as well.
Yeah. So what you'll often see is people will say in a race, a young person, so let's say an individual can, within a race, be at VO2 max for 4 minutes in a sprint triathlon or in a half marathon, and then they pay a really high tax on that aggressiveness with having to slow down to get enough oxygen to buffer out the waste products and stabilize the internal environment, then maybe come good again. When you have the data that you can sit and show a young person, say your VO2 max is probably around this, and at this point in the race, you were too high in intensity for too long for your current capacity, and what you're telling me as a subjective experience of not being able to keep up or whatever it may be, it's an objective reality that you're not yet fit enough to do what you tried to do. You can't transcend. When you understand physiology, it is, no matter how mentally tough you think you are, when someone like Goggins talks about random, non-esoteric stuff, it's great that that's his subjective experience. But objectively, when you stop and look at what's happening in his body, you could say, hey, look, hold on. This is what's happening. This is there is logic to what someone's perceiving, even if they can't see the logic in it. So a lot of it with, say, the marathon, Simon, there's two parts to what you were referencing. The first part I would say is that if you understand tolerances, you can build a better plan. So you don't see people as emotional about their strategy. And if you then are able to reflect on the detail of how somebody executed the race, you can then point to how they might execute better next time. Because if someone's physiology is sort of really good and then you make a good plan and the race is not good, then they may need some mental skills or some neurological nervous system regulation or anxiety reducing strategies from a psychologist or from a coach rather than anything else. They might just have issues regards to expressing their fitness because they're predisposed to anxiety or they're predisposed to becoming decoupled from an objective framework on race day and struggling to regulate their emotions. Because normally, if you look at someone, like, it's staggering that 70% of over 150 sub 3 hour marathon runners that I've coached are engineers. So systems-based thinkers who I sort of can talk to, explain a concept, and they say, yeah, that makes reason sense. And then they give you informed consent, not faith or not blind faith or nothing else. It's just that makes sense. And then they trust a process. Like we have a guy called Loic Drulic in triathlon who he's kept on progressing. He's a naval architect, very logical, very linear. His power in the Ironman triathlon used to be he would push 210 watts for 153 beats a minute. Now he can push like 260 watts for 135 beats a minute, because when I set him a zone to stay at, he doesn't go over it. He stays at the zone where he's oxidizing fat, allows his body to have a very stable environment to easily produce energy at a moderate rate, and keeps getting better. Astrid Roberts is another one. Very logical, 2:47 marathon in her early 50s. Very logical, understands context, doesn't push tolerances. Whereas other people think if I push a bit harder today, they don't know delayed gratification, and they cook the whole session, they cook the whole adaptation, because if you go a little bit too fast, it actually compromises and changes the target and the physiology of the workout, and often creates a more fragile internal environment that they don't even realize at the time. But I think a nice way to ask athletes to reflect is, did you feel better at the time, or did you feel better the next day? Because sometimes when you push a bit too hard in training, it satiates you temporarily, but the next day you're like, wow, that was pretty hard. I don't know if I could do that again. Whereas if you get someone who can actually have the discipline of conscious non-action, like I could go faster, but that's not the intention. They have lower inflammatory markers, they have lower cortisol, they have increasing deep self-confidence and self-efficacy, and that's the person who makes long-term yield and moves towards self-mastery. So they have to identify the emotion there to maybe push a bit harder, but choose not to act upon it because it's not what they've been asked to do, and to truly give informed consent for the coach to prescribe and for them to do, and to trust that that's better than trying to overreach or overthink.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, including myself, and I'm sure you too, Simon and Vicky, are very guilty of pushing too hard in what we would call a threshold workout and end up absolutely cooked at the end of it. And that's probably not the goal, as you're stating there, Raf. But you touched on earlier about the size of motors. And as someone who has a very small motor, maybe we could go through my results, Zander, for when I was on the treadmill a couple of weeks back. What do those markers like? I think you've explained it very well in the report, but maybe for the listeners' sake, you could take us through where my kind of results landed and what that indicates about me as a runner, and maybe where it sees what I need to be focusing on to progress my running goals, knowing that eventually within the next 1 to 2 years, I would like to run a sub 240 marathon.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes, as stated in the report, like you were very stable during the first initial steps in intensity. So obviously we started at about 13K an hour, and we didn't see much of a jump, obviously except the first one, but the rest of them were all very, very stable, very slow increase in accumulation. And that suggests that you have a well-trained aerobic system, in the sense that you're able to produce majority of the energy required to run at those speeds using fat. And hence you're not really relying on glucose, which is a good sign, because that's what we want. Lactate is the thing that will, I guess, bite you in the butt towards the end of a marathon. So if you can keep, concentrations down for as long as you can, then that's going to help you maintain better form and get through without that overwhelming dread. But in terms of what you can do to get faster and start hitting these time goals, is that idea of grabbing the chart and pulling it to the right. So at the same concentration where you might start accumulating LT1 or LT2, we want to see your pace being faster. So Raf touched on that, obviously, with all the sort of marathoners that we've had coming through Front Runner. And by doing these specific sessions towards at the right time, but then prior to that, when we're conditioning, staying in the right zone and targeting the right state is going to produce those physiological adaptations. So we both sort of agreed for you, we would recommend doing some more tempo or steady state work. So obviously tempo being at or around LT1. And I guess the way you want to approach that can vary. So something that I was going to touch on previously was the ways in which the pros utilize this idea of lactate in their training, and when it comes to how much threshold training you want to do, what are the ways that you can structure it in order to provide you with the most amount of exposure, but the least amount of cortisol and inflammatory markers, etc. And we can do that by breaking down each workout into interval-based types. So you'll see obviously a lot of the pros, they might do 3x10 minutes, 5x5 minutes, 6x6 minutes, that sort of thing. So they're not running fast. I mean, it might look fast to us because they're insane, but their physiology, it's actually like extremely stable, and they could probably just keep going and be completely fine. But by cutting it into intervals, we're actually preventing any sort of drift, any sort of lactate drift above where we want it, and are able to then control the body's responses. So that's one way to approach the tempo intervals, and we do that normally on Saturdays where we get them to do like a lot more of an exposure, but then we break it up into segments. But then the other area we can look at training is your steady state. So it's not at tempo or LT1, it's sort of just below. And it's not easy either. It's not like zone 2. It's sort of right in the middle, where you might feel like you're hitting runners high and everything is just great. You're enjoying the scenery and you can just kind of keep going. Those workouts we can also adapt, and we don't necessarily need to be doing these in breaks because we won't be accumulating much. So those you could be looking at integrating into some long runs or doing a little bit of zone 2 just to warm up the legs before doing, say, 30 minutes at steady state, and then another, say, 20 to 10 minutes just to flush and cool down. But then again, if we're touching on the elites, it's interesting because what they might do on like a double threshold day, for example, is they'll smash out some really hard super threshold intervals in the morning. So by that, we mean just a touch over LT2, where they do accumulate very quickly, but then they control that by breaking them into very small windows. So they might do like 20 by 400. So it's only a 1 minute effort. So the lactate actually doesn't get up to the extent where it would cause deterioration. And then they cut it with that rest to get it back down. But then they're actually still training at that speed. So they're still getting exposure to the speed. And then in the afternoon, they might do some steady. So because they did the harder threshold in the morning, their steady is still normally broken up into segments, just to reduce any risk. But for the marathoner doing, maybe an easy run in the morning followed by a harder run in the afternoon, you can afford to probably keep it as a continuous style run rather than breaking it up, because you're trying to maximize how much you're getting out of the workout. And for some of us, that's only one run a day. So, yeah,
sure. So if I'm trying to drag that graph to the right, I think so. You're saying if I'm training like in that steady state, I'm sitting slightly below LT1. That means technically, if I train that state more often, I become more efficient at using fat as a fuel source. Then slowly over time, that LT1 and LT2 will start to move to the right. Is that kind of what?
Yes, that's true. But we still also need to target LT1 at the same time, because if you only did steady state, your LT1 will become your ceiling. So your steady state can't overtake your LT1. So if you push LT1, there's room for steady to come faster. And then vice versa, as you approach your actual marathon, and if all things go to plan, theoretically, you're doing everything perfectly, your tempo pace has gotten a lot closer to your threshold pace. That threshold pace then becomes, I guess, in a sense, the limiting factor or the ceiling. So then when you approach the race, you can, in the last few weeks, you can start to increase the intensity and do a few more like longer threshold efforts, and then hopefully nudge that LT2 up a touch and create a bit more room for the tempo. And, you know, as a result, that might shift a touch more, but it also just gives you a bit of leeway, because marathon being, you know, 3 hours, we break down over that period of time. And as a result, if we were running, say, 4-minute Ks and it was well below LT1 at the start of the race, by the end of the race, that 4-minute K might be like way over LT1, just because our body's deteriorated that much. We don't have efficient energy production anymore. We've run out of glucose. It's just all sort of crashing down. So if we can create a larger window, as a result, we're going to run faster and have a better race.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the things you mentioned in the report was that I had a relatively narrow lactate profile, meaning that my LT1 and LT2 were relatively close together. So it sounds like your suggestion is that I do need to probably give that ceiling a nudge, that LT2, just to be able to give myself a bit more breathing room in that space between LT1 and LT2. If is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that idea of ceiling also flows on well to this idea of VO2 max, and whether it's useful for like the everyday athlete. It can give us an idea of what your objective ceiling is in terms of your maximum ability. Because if we were to undertake a VO2 max test for yourself and find out that it's, you know, let's just say theoretically 15 seconds per kilometer faster than your threshold, we know there's actually room for your threshold to go up. But if, for example, your VO2 max pace was only like a couple seconds faster per K, then it's kind of difficult in that sense, considering where we are age-wise. It's hard to push that VO2 max up. But it tells us, okay, the ceiling is the VO2 max, or the ceiling is the threshold. If it's the threshold, all right, let's boost it, create room, and then the speed will follow.
I guess what we didn't go through is exactly what the lactate test involved. I guess what my experience of it was that we basically ran through 3-minute intervals on the treadmill, with a brief break between to read heart rate, and the lactate reading through. In my case, it was a nick to the ear, and take the bloods, read the result, and then increase the speed, repeat, basically. And I think it was in 0.5 kilometer an hour increments, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously we took that through to the point where you saw that that second inflection point, and then the lactate increased, and that's kind of the end of the test, if I'm not mistaken, because we don't need to push it further than that. We've been talking about VO2 as well. What in terms of the testing for VO2, what does that look like? Without necessarily going into too much, because I'm wary of your time.
Raf, do you want to touch on that, because you've done a few of those with the master?
Yeah. So we have got a VO2 master test. I think one of the big things for me is VO2 max testing. It's not invasive, but it's just uncomfortable. So you have to, like, we have quite a practical tool in the VO2 master that gives fairly good data. I think it's a bit invasive, and it makes it very hard to get people to want to do it repeatedly, whereas lactate testing is relatively simple. It tells me more what most adult recreational runners need to know, and people are more inclined to want to keep doing it. I'm not to say I was traumatized by doing VO2 max testing, but I just found it irrelevant, invasive, and just like I, as an athlete myself, I didn't find that I got anything from it. And I just didn't enjoy the testing protocols with a mask shoved on my face. It felt completely atypical to normal training. Whereas if I do a lactate, and I think that that's the LT2 is a limiting factor for most recreational runners, they can run in their normal breathing condition. They can exercise on a treadmill in a kinematic profile and in a setup that feels familiar to them as a normal running profile, running gait. You start getting a metabolic card on someone who's never run on it, I wonder how much of the time the whole context is just an overthinking, overstimulated, can't breathe normally. Like, there's just so many factors that I found that it was just almost irrelevant for me. And I've probably carried that over a bit for adults. For kids, I can see, like if we're trying to test if a kid has the potential to be a world-class athlete, especially around puberty where there's massive opportunities to grow, I think therefore, and at that time, it's relevant. And I know Zander's keen to look at how it might be able to tell him what substrates and different substrate utilization real time, where it probably is valuable in a practical sense because you can use it during training with the kids. But for me, it's relatively stable in a well-trained person. It doesn't have as much responsiveness to training as the other thresholds. Is that a fair comment, Zander?
Yeah, it is. It's hard to see the jump. It's more so the VO2 pace that we're looking for. Like the number itself might change a little bit. I mean, we've seen Christian Blumenfeld somehow increase his more and more and more, but it's dependent on weight and a lot of other factors. But it's the pace you can sustain at your VO2 max and how that compares to the pace you can sustain at your threshold that tells us about your physiology. So that's another term for another day, but it's called fractional utilization.
And so if you look also, what we did find with a few people, in a well-trained adult marathon runner, their VO2 max will necessarily reduce in the heavy periods of training due to the amount of fat oxidation and neuromuscular fatigue they have. So they will not be able to actually reach their true VO2 max in heavy marathon training. So you're looking for a ceiling they don't have. They can't really access readily in training. Like, I think I like to sort of say to my marathon runners, look, when you're doing 8 or 10 by a K in marathon training, you probably will often find that the first 4 to 5 reps, you feel like you're trying to get moving and your body's a bit lethargic. Whereas when you're training for a 10K, you should feel as though from rep 1 or 2, you're good to go. Often, sometimes in really deep marathon training, people might feel as though they never really get up to that threshold in those 1K reps. That's a sign that neuromuscular fatigue and your bodily fatigue is quite high. And to try to go looking for a ceiling even higher than the threshold, as you can imagine, would be quite risky. And early on, I had a chat with Dick Telford, who was the first sports scientist at the AIS, about our adult marathon running populations having a few soft tissue injuries. And he goes, well, as always, someone who's learned will ask 3 or 4 more questions than the average person. It seemed to be that we were trying to get our marathon runners who were, say, over 3 hours to do VO2 max training on tired bodies. And he said, well, it's not really relevant to their performance. And if biomechanically they're getting into biomechanical profiles, which they have never really adopted as young athletes, and now they're trying to run in really aggressive biomechanical profiles under fatigue, the soft tissues will fail. You know, like you said to me, you're the physio, not me. He's a sports scientist. I should have known. But we hadn't had as much experience as him, but it was common sense after that. It's like, well, if someone's never run fast, why would you get them to run in a metabolically unstable environment that fast when they're already stretching their endurance capabilities in training? You can't have both. You have to pick your poison.
That's
Just changing tats quickly. I was looking at the Front Runner website, and you've got this coaches blog section. And I think the one article I obsessed over last year was the data set for sub 3 hour marathoners. I think I must have looked at that every couple of months just to verify whether I was physically capable of running sub 3. What was the impetus behind, I guess, that section of the website?
Well, I suppose every time someone asks me a question as a human being, I have to constantly watch, because my mind, and I don't know if it's just my mind, assumes that I've said it so many times that everyone must understand it. And so it's one of the flaws of accumulating knowledge and constantly trying to grow and learn is I often find that means that I'm constantly trying to grow and evolve. And so when someone asks me a question that maybe I felt as though I got my head around 10 years ago, I've sometimes on reflection felt as though I wasn't giving them enough information in that conversation to give them what they needed at their point in that journey. And so I was very lucky that Ben is a very technical expert, and Tom Bruins, who I used to coach, who was number 1 in the world for duathlon, was an engineer who could model data pretty well on a spreadsheet. I said, what I need to do is my predisposition to being a bit philosophical rather than giving people what they need, not what I perceive, is we need to have information that's empirical so that people can see something visually and get something theoretically that they can reflect on and learn at their own time, so that I'm not failing to give them the information that they're seeking. And so that was why we tried really hard to create content that was empirical so that it would be enduring. And so a lot of those blogs have been there for over a decade now. And it's amazing how many people reference it. I mean, it got to the point where there was so many, like I think we're up to about 180 sub 3 hour marathon runners we've coached. We stopped collecting the data because the super shoes corrupted the data.
Yeah.
So when I talk about those first wave guys, like a bigger bodied guy like Chris, in my experience, will probably be a better responder to the super shoes than someone who's smaller with a higher neuromuscular sort of biomechanical cadence, who has the natural stiffness. Someone who can be big and start to break down with those super foams where something gives back more tends to be a bigger responder. So even like, say, Moose or Tom DeCanto, who are two very well-known runners, are probably the sort of guys who are the biggest responders to super shoes, because biomechanically in the old days they would have broken down. They're just too big, too powerful, and then they start to get fatigued. That can look not too good. But the super shoes have been protective and preserved function for longer, and often augmented function of a bigger body, putting more force through it, more so than a smaller body. And so guys like Adam Martin, who I used to love saying had feet like a ballerina and a body like a fullback, he ran 2:31 as a 90 kilo bloke. He used to have beautiful feet. He probably would have run 2:26 in the shoes that everyone else had the benefit of. So that doesn't do justice to the character of good men like that, to start to put data up that includes all the people. And then we're so busy coaching that I'm like, I get the gist. The gist is pretty self-evident. We don't need to keep rehashing it. Yeah, we got 90. I think we had 91 subjects in that data set at that point who'd broken 3 hours. There was enough data to draw a fairly valid hypothesis and just have it there as something that people could reference for their own interest or information.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very generous of you to be able to give that back to the running community as a font of knowledge. Guys, I think I'm wary of your time. I don't want to keep you any longer. You've got families. Now, just before first of all, would love to say thanks for coming on tonight. Obviously, for having me over there and doing the lactate test. I'm looking forward to seeing how I can manipulate my training over the next little while, and then maybe get back out there in a few months' time to see what those results look like. Final thoughts for anyone considering a lactate threshold test or coaching through Frontrunner, wanting to take their running to the next level?
So, I mean, I think with people seeking coaching, I suppose there's a number of different elements to what people need at different points in the journey, and it's expanded so much in the marketplace. I suppose Frontrunner now, we've tried to move into a model by employing Zander and sort of going down the line of I'm a physio by trade. The human resources of getting physiotherapists is fairly easy. There's 300 physios that graduate every year that come through university with a very high level of insight into musculoskeletal and other physiotherapy sort of management portions of the service provision that physios do. We are moving in the line of, I think that coaching will move in exactly the same direction. It'll become a profession where we would only employ sports scientists and coaches moving forward. So some of our contractors who are already there are doing a great job, but I think there's enough maturity that people need to access objective counsel and be able to objectively understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. And for us then as coaches to be able to create an environment where we live in a democratic environment where we can learn off each other as coaches and become better, so that we're actually looking at things in an evidence-based way, so that whether people need a second opinion from what they're doing with their coach currently via a lactate threshold test and recommendation, or whether they want a personalised program that's based on a more empirical or scientific basis, Frontrunner would start to become the place that they would trust, while still respecting the legacy of, the thousands of people that we work with every day and week, who have been with us since the beginning, who have given us a body of experience that allows us to start to adjust to how running's become, where we're not getting first touch people anymore. We're getting people that are maybe 3 to 5 years along their running journey and needing expertise beyond what they were first accessing to keep realising their own goals. So I suppose front runner comes in when people have a very clear goal, and it provides the trusted counsel of having, like I said, 180 odd 3-hour marathoners before them, or if it's a triathlon, 9 sub-9 hour Ironmans, the data and the experience within the group is there for people to trust that the objective advice they get will help them to unlock more of their potential, and just to play that role within the community, and also therefore challenge other coaches to have to step up and educate themselves more so that they're delivering a service that is respectful of the people who are trusting them. So the whole coaching professionalism goes up. And so people who call themselves a running coach have a really high expectation from the consumer on the quality of knowledge and service they deliver, so that it matures as a career that a good young man like Zander could see himself as a professional running coach. And the lucky thing for me is, like, since we started, I mean, Rachel McCormick, I don't know if you guys ever met Rachel, but she landed the best job in the world. She's done a PhD in exercise physiology after starting at the running centre, and now she's Keely Hodgson's physiologist at M11 Track Club.
Wow.
We got Ben over at On, and you know, the pathways. I mean, these young people are getting opportunities that I would have dreamed of as a coach or a sort of sports scientist. So I think running's just going through this beautiful phase of growth where the opportunities for young people who bring that evidence-based practice to coaching, who knows what opportunities are there waiting for coaches. So I think it's exciting that coaching's becoming a legitimate career for motivated young people who want to pursue it.
I think we'll cut it there, Raf. Zander, Raf, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate your insight tonight. Thanks for joining us on the WA Running Podcast.
Thanks so much for your support, guys. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you.
A massive thank you to those guys for giving up their Monday night. I think we said we'd take 30 minutes to run through that interview, and we ended up talking for about 52 or 53 minutes. So thank you, Raf and Zander, again for giving us your time. And hopefully the listeners will appreciate and maybe consider taking on a lactate threshold themselves. Have either of you guys done that previously?
Not me. Vicky, how about you?
Not to that level of scientific rigor. No.
I was going to ask, actually, Chris, didn't get a chance to ask it during the chat. Reflecting on your training to date, where do you think, either where you've done things correctly or incorrectly based on the results that you received about, those paces and the recommended training zones?
Yeah. I would say that, to be honest, most of my threshold work that I do is around. So the results of my test were, and I mean, I probably won't share this with the listeners in terms of the full test, but generally my LT1 sits somewhere between 4:08 and 4 minutes a kilometre, and my LT2 sits somewhere around 3:45 a kilometre. I think that's generally speaking, that's where it was. And there were heart rates attached to that. There was lactate readings attached to those as well. But but basically going from, I think there was one step where I ran 3:52 per kilometre, or 3:47 a kilometre, and then I went to 3:42 per kilometre, I think was the gap. And it was obviously within. Actually, no, it was from it was like 3:45 through to 3:38. I think was roughly the step, and it was in between those two points that after I ran the 3:38, Zander was like, "Okay, here we go. We've got the inflection point has been reached. We can see that you've gone from roughly 4 millimoles of lactate to 6.3 in a short step." When previously I was going up by increments of like 0.3 to 0.5, as I got toward the end of that, the fastest thing. So to answer your question, yeah, I have been kind of targeting 3:45 as my threshold, and my interpretation of threshold to date has been a pace, because I'm relatively uneducated when it comes to actually understanding how the physiology works. My understanding of it is that I use tempo as roughly a guide of what I could run for 2 hours at max effort, and then threshold at roughly 1 hour max effort, which I think is fairly common in some training circles and stuff you'll read around the web. But so yeah, I generally target 3:45. I feel like ahead of Gold Coast, my threshold might have been a little bit higher than that, because I was able to sustain like a very high, like comparatively to what I am now, a very high level of mileage and intensity. So I feel like I was able to complete workouts without completely rinsing myself. Threshold workouts of up to 30 minutes in duration, 30 or sometimes 40 minutes in duration, at a pace faster than that, but knowing that I have basically had 8 weeks off at the end of last year, and then I'm now returning to fitness. I can't expect that my threshold is in that same place, So I know it will move over time, but I'm not going to rush that. So I think there's no point in me going out and running 3:40s, because as the guys said in the chat, if I'm going and running 3:40s for my my threshold, well, then I'm not actually getting the benefits of the workout. I'm actually losing. I'm actually that's becoming a different workout. That's kind of heading toward like VO2 or whatever. So it's better off that I sit just below that threshold, break up my sessions into small chunks so that I'm able to keep my heart rate down, keep my lactate levels down, and sustain a consistent high intensity for a longer period of time. So yeah, I think I think it's really helpful. It's actually given me some confirmation on what I've been doing, but in talk, like just what Raf was talking about earlier about maybe hitting VO2 quite as hard as I have over the course of the last 3 years, I've kind of carried that VO2 all the way through my training, regardless of whether I'm training for a 5K or a marathon. And those VO2 sessions are sometimes the hardest sessions to do, because I typically do them on a Tuesday and I've done my long run on a Sunday. Potentially, like again, I like to have a bit of fun with my training, so I don't like to fall into the same rhythm of doing the same sessions all the time. I like to maybe push the envelope a little bit on the Sunday, and then I probably pay the price for that on a Tuesday, and that makes my VO2s feel hard. But maybe there's more value in me doing, and I'd hate to say this because I know a lot of people talk about these Norwegian singles and shit like that. It's a fucking awful term. I hate the name of it. But like maybe there's more value in me doing less VO2 and more threshold or tempo work throughout my week. If my goal is to run a faster marathon, and so yeah, like right now my goal is not that. My goal is to simply train for this pace job and then carry that and build that fitness or that through into Transcend. But then from that point onward into the next 18 months would be to maybe to lift that LT2 and try and create a high ceiling for myself, so that when I do decide to run and train for another marathon, that my LT2 is high enough as such that I can actually lift the LT2 to LT1 by a considerable margin, and then thus my marathon pace should be faster for the same or less amount of effort. So that's how I've understood it. I mean, I'm sure I've got a couple of things there wrong, but I think it was really helpful for me to understand just having those conversations. And I had a conversation with Raf offline, like just the week after that test, and just having those conversations helps me frame training in a particular way. And I guess one thing that Raf mentioned again that was also beneficial is that someone like myself who has been training by himself more or less without a coach for the last 3 to 4 years, and you get so far by yourself, but eventually there's going to come a time where to get the very best of yourself, you need to seek out the services of a coach who is of a similar mindset to yourself, has the same kind of philosophies that you do, and then can help you then achieve whatever goals you might have in the future. So self-coached for now, but maybe one day there'll be a moment where I might be considering something if I really desperately do want to run a sub 240 marathon after I turn 40.
Sounds good.
I think arming yourself with the information, even if you decide that you're going to continue to self-coach, getting these sorts of tests done, checking, you could do that again in 6 months' time after another few months of solid training, and see how it's improved, because it will improve. And I think that information is power, isn't it? It's what however you feel is the best way to go about it for you. And as like Raf was talking about in the chat, horses for courses, in my opinion, with coaches. They're the type, front runner exists for the type of athletes that they attract and coach. There are other coaching groups that attract different types of athletes in Perth. There are people like yourself, Chris, that are quite happy self-coaching and enjoy that, taking that on. And so it's, what works for you. But the other thing I wanted to pick up on, and what you said but earlier, was the fact that you talked about the losing the benefit of the training and the session when you push too hard. And I definitely think I've noticed that in the past. I get carried away in sessions, as I'm sure that often we all do. And when I'm feeling like I'm in the middle of a marathon training block, for example, I remember building to Sydney last year, I was definitely pushing my threshold sessions beyond probably what I should have been, and was rinsing myself on a Saturday morning, then going out and doing a long run on a Sunday, like feeling worn out, and don't recall feeling particularly fit. Like, I was obviously fit, like I was running like fine and everything, but the last few months, probably the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, any sessions that I've been set that have been tempo or threshold work, I have been really cautious, and I've been like probably at the bottom end of what the zone I would typically run that at, the pace zone I would typically run that at, and the heart rate zone. And because of the niggles that I've been carrying, and I've just been really cautious. And I feel fit, cardiovascular wise, I feel fit at the moment. And I think it's because I've been doing those sessions properly. I've not been pushing beyond the zone. I've been actually going, right, I'm going to be cautious, I'm going to sit in my zone. And that is truly where I should be. And it has improved my fitness. So it's interesting. That's just a gut feel that I have, just after listening to that chat with them both and what you were saying as well. So.
It's so easy to, just overcook yourself in training, particularly if you're running with a group of people as well. There's all this like expectation of going, all right, this guy is roughly my fitness level. He's running at this pace. I got to go for it. Like I got to match that guy or whatever. Or maybe you're just comparing yourself to a previous training block and go, well, I was pretty fit back then and I was hitting, 345. So this tempo session, I'm going to have to hit 345s. Now, it's not really a tempo session because you're absolutely rinsing yourself, but it's this like the comparison, right? Where you're like, oh, it's either the person I'm running with that I think I should be of their equal or better, or my
it looks good on Strava.
Or looks good. Yeah, I'm so on the pretty graph. So good insights there. Thanks to Raf and Zander for sharing their knowledge there. All right, let's get into some results because we're heading into long episode territory here. So we have
well and truly past my bedtime.
Yeah, it's 9:28 p.m. So it's not going to be an early night for either of us. We'll start things off with the state senior track and field champs. That was over the course of a couple of days over the weekend, but we'll maybe just stick with the 1500. It's got your name here, Vicky. Can you run through some of the results there?
So the men's 1500 metres was won by Max Shervington in 3:44.12, followed by Matt Smith in 3:48.08, which was a PB. And then in third was Jonah Hanikeri in 3:53.19, which was also a PB. And then the women's senior 1500 was won by Maddie Luscombe in 4:32.56. PBs galore here. Maddie also won this year's 3,000 metre title, and the following day after the 1500 came second in the 800. So Maddie's on a bit of a roll at the moment. Sarah Hines was second in 4:35.47 and Mia Waters in 4:36.21, both also with new PBs.
Very good.
Yeah. Nice. More or less wrapping up track season, I think. So maybe there's one or two other meets, I'm not sure. But that's exciting stuff. I think Rams looks like they've taken out all of the men's on the podium there. So
bit of a trifecta. I think it's heading to national champs basically after this.
Yeah.
So really good there. We had Shizuoka Marathon also on the weekend. It's looking. I feel like I've been looking at Japanese marathons just selfishly for a potential future board meeting that I'll have with my family about 2027 plans. And I think Shizuoka is probably going to be at top of the list, the one where I might try and convince Linda for us to go on holiday next year. But we had a couple of Perth runners. So we had Scott French, aka Loz French's partner. So he ran sub 3, which is pretty remarkable there. I think he was quite conservative in terms of his chances, but seemed like he ran pretty consistent splits throughout to run a 2:58.14. And then we've got Jules McNish. She ran a 3:05.01. So she was hoping for a 3:10 to a 3:15, but exceeded expectations. And I think she had a huge negative split. So clearly sandbagging her chances there. But over the moon there. I think she was a bit worried about her hammies not being friends with her on the day, but looked like it was a beautiful day for her. And then Brian Lipp, one of many marathons he's got planned this year. He ran a 3:06.20. So good work to you guys. I think Jules in a chat message had said that it was it's like 3 degrees in the morning and it got to sort of 8 degrees later in the day. So it seems like perfect marathoning conditions. So looks to be the marathon to be, I think, for those that love cold running weather. That's for sure. All right, we'll move on to very quickly Herdys, which is this Friday. We got details of picking up her bibs and all that sort of stuff. So it's getting very close. We've got 561 registrations, meaning that there is an opportunity for there to be a record for the most starters at a Backyard Ultra event, which is currently held by Sydney Backyard Ultra, currently set at 473.
It's going to be close because last year there were 100 non-starters. So if we run on that theory, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be close because 473, 561. I don't know.
We'll see how we go. Yeah, definitely. How about we just rattle off some potential guys and girls out the front? Vicky, do you want to just read some of these names that we've picked out here?
Yes. We've got Tim Moffat, who ran 38 laps last year for the win. Darren Chandler was the assist last year with 37. I've got some money on Darren, I think. He's been very present at some of the recce's and he is in consistent training. Thibaut Delacroix did 32. Delacroix did 32. My French is poor, to say the least. 32 laps for Thibaut last year, and Colin Malden, 59 laps at Herdys 2025. That's a big number.
That's huge.
Big number. I don't know Colin. Watch out. Andy Carrington is on about 32 or 33, I think, at the moment for his PB. I hope I'm not doing him out of any laps. Andy,
let's go 33. I can't remember.
Mike Hall is also in. He was at Herdys last year, did 32. And Russell Poor did 24 parkruns in 24 hours early this year, so training well, potentially. For the females, Margie Hadley is in, and she is currently on day 68 of Hardcore Harry's. She is not out yet. There are still 3 people remaining in that last person standing competition. she's starting Herdys. I don't know what her plan is, whether she's going to continue with hardcore Harry's or whether she's going to go all in for Herdys. Not sure, but she'll have to make a decision Friday, Saturday, because she won't be able to do both. So it's going to be really exciting to see what Margie's plan is. And gosh, she just blows my mind. She's incredible. Julie Gibson did 28 laps in 23 and she did 23, I think, in 24. I ran with her a little bit. I'm not sure whether she's in or not for this year. She may be on the start list, but I'm not sure whether she's running it. Tammy Lovett did 25 laps, I think, last year. So I've heard that name before. I think she was podium at Sandman, or possibly definitely did Sandman as a training run, the 50K. And then Genevieve Warnier did 21 laps last year. So, yeah, there's some interesting names there. I'm sure there's some names that we've missed as well. I did run through the start list and I couldn't pick out any names, but you never know with these, these backyard ultra runners that come over from other states and take our podiums.
Will we see a Vicky Richardson on the podium, like based on the competition that you see in front of you there?
I have absolutely no idea. No, I don't know. Anything could happen. I've still got a goal, and it's still going to be at least 26 laps. But who knows whether that's going to happen or not? I don't know.
It's good podcast content, anyway. So
exactly. See if Vicky fails or succeeds next week.
Success only. Yeah.
Success only. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're recording on the 16th of March, so that's Monday. So we'll see whether you're still going. We might do a live cross.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way I'm still going to be going. That's for sure. But yeah, I might be unavailable because I'm passed out in bed.
Yep.
Possibly.
That's great. We shall see. All right. Well, in terms of upcoming events, there's a whole bunch over the next couple of weeks. I think this weekend's a busy one. But maybe we'll just touch on the fact that we're going to record with Ian and Megan from the Bunbury Runners Club this week as part of the Bunbury Running Festival lead up. So hopefully we can get that out to you over the next couple of weeks. Let's get straight into Vicky's verbalizations quickly.
Oh, just one from me. So we are not affiliated with any running club or coaching business or anybody, but I will give a shout out to Wolves because the Wolves collectively have raised $47,000 for Lifeline so far of a $50,000 target. That's with, I think there's about 37 of us that are starting Herdys on Friday, a lot with big goals. So yeah, just a great charity, great cause, and a lot of people who are not necessarily all fully fit, but are going to give it a good red hot crack because it's for charity. So I think that I'm hoping we smash that target. This is not a beg for donations. It's really it's all about raising awareness and starting conversations around mental health. If it's just reaching out to somebody, giving somebody that you haven't spoken to for a while a call, or dropping them a message, or just asking somebody if they're okay and if they're really okay. That's what it's about, really. But the money also is great just to support those people that answer the phones for Lifeline.
Sounds good. Thank you, Vicky. And quickly in Simon Says, because I'm not affiliated with the organisation, we'll look out this week on our socials. We'll be giving away some HBF Run for a Reason tickets. So hopefully we can get that out to you, perhaps a competition of some sorts. And then hopefully we can announce some winners over the next couple of weeks. All right, let's wrap the episode up with weapons, Chris.
Yeah, so we had Adam Kopp win his 8th 400-metre state title in 48 seconds flat. Eight state titles. I don't know what the record is for the most state titles by anyone in this state, but that's surely got to be up there. Winning must be pretty tough for Adam. I'm not sure if he's ever lost a race in his life, but
do we know how old Adam is?
He's 8 years old.
Winning since birth.
I'm not sure, but I imagine given he's running 48 seconds in the 400, he's not 39 years old. I'll tell you that much.
27 by the look of it.
Okay, very good. We had Jess Byrd, who runs with Ogging Squad, over in Thailand on holiday. Just sees that there's a local 10K to take part in, decides to run it, wins the thing. What do you do? 100% humidity, no doubt some very hot food the night before, amongst other possible things you could get away with in Thailand. But winning a 10K, I'm not sure what the prize money or if there was any. But maybe
there seems to be some sort of presentation of some sorts with someone looking very important.
A large serve of mango sticky rice, maybe.
Jess, please let us know.
Jess is a pretty impressive runner. I mean, obviously, she's going to run a 10K in Thailand. I met her a couple of months ago at a run, and she was telling me that she was living in Edinburgh and she did the Edinburgh Marathon, and she told her partner that she was going to run around 4 hours. And I think she ran it in like 3:05 or something.
What?
Holy shit.
I just went out and ran, and I just really enjoyed it. It was great, and I did a lot better than I thought I would. And I was like, okay, wow. So yeah,
must be nice.
She's a very good up and coming runner, and now living back in Perth, I think we'll see more of Jess.
Good stuff, Jess. And I think, as you said, Vicky, I think we're still 3 in this race with Margie at Hardcore Harry's. So we're on day 68. Margie's going to have to make a pretty hard decision at the end of the week, given she's
both.
Somehow just keep going. I mean, you could just run for an extra. You could just beat Phil Gore's world record and just keep going, I suppose. But
you can't do it because it has to be run. The Hardcore Harry's event has to be run in under 8 minutes per kilometre. For the 60, what would it be? No, 72 Ks by then, I think. So it's not actually possible to do it on the Saturday. The Friday, I think she will be able to do by adding time to each lap or distance to each lap, but I think Saturday will be impossible for her to do.
Sure.
I'm
Quick
not
maths.
an expert.
Very good. Yeah. All right. Well, my battery's going to run out on this laptop any moment, guys. So
that's a great reason for us all to go to bed.
Okay, I'll quickly wrap this up. Thank you guys for joining us. Will you be here, Chris? No, you'll be in Singapore.
I'll be in Singapore next week, but you'll hear my voice at some stage talking to Ian and Megan. So
very good. So it could very well just be me next week because Vicky will still be going and I'll just be talking to myself. So I'll wrap this up very quickly. Thanks, guys, for joining us. You can reach out to us at WA Running Pod on Instagram. Our email address is warunningpodcast@gmail.com and our Strava group is Warp. Thanks for joining us, and you'll probably just hear from me next week on the WA Running Podcast. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Party on.
See ya.
Thanks.
9:42. Vicky, it's going to be a late one. Might just have to be 7 hours of sleep tonight.
I'm going to be late for work tomorrow. An hour's lying.
Very good. Very good. We forgot to touch on when you're going to consume the soft serve ice creams.
It'll be post Singapore, just to confirm for the listeners. Yep.
Very good. Thank you.